Welcome to Beyond the Trees, a podcast presented by Cedarwood Financial Partners. I'm your host, Alex Murphy, and today we have a very special guest that I am excited about, Shelby Nicholl. She is the founder of Muriel Consulting, a consulting and recruiting company that helps financial advisors move firms, build new RIAs from scratch, and hire W-2 staff. She's a 25-year corporate vet turned entrepreneur. Her corporate gigs include time at AG Edwards, Edward Jones, and was a senior vice president at LPL Financial. She's licensed with her Series 7 and 66, earned an MBA, and is a certified exit planning advisor and student extraordinaire. It sounds like some people call her the Oprah of the RIA world. Welcome, Shelby. So excited to have you.
Oh, thank you. Wasn't that the funniest thing that somebody called me Oprah of the RIA world? I'm used to like RIA whisperer, like a surprisingly tough negotiator, but Oprah, I was like, woohoo, this is fun.
Yeah, you can't argue with that one. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so that story was even just in the last couple of weeks where, a client had said they weren't a binge watcher of TV, but they had just been binging tons of podcast episodes, both my own and others. And, after listening to a whole bunch of different ones, they just felt like that was their saying, that you are like the Oprah of the RIA world. And I loved it because I was like, oh, this means I actually am listening fully, right? And I'm being the encourager that so many people need. And, Oprah is a billionaire. So obviously she's done some things in business correctly.
Yeah, just a few. I'd say
Just
it
a
says a
few.
lot of great things about you for sure.
Oh, yeah. I was pretty touched.
That's awesome. Well, you told me that Muriel Consulting has a story behind it, so I'd love to hear that before we dive in.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really in the name. So Muriel is named after Muriel Siebert, and Muriel Siebert was the first woman member of the New York Stock Exchange. So, in 1968, it was her, and 1368, I think it is, men. And back then, the stock exchange was like a country club, and you had to get sponsored in order to be a member of it. So by this point in her career, she had exited firms and had started her own, and she still wasn't kind of on equal footing with the other firms, and so she needed a seat on the stock exchange, and she had to go to 9 guys before they said yes, and finally the ninth one did, and the rest was history, and that she got a seat on the exchange, but definitely had to work a little harder in order to get it.
Very cool story. Persistent, to say the least.
Yeah, persistent, a breakaway, right? Because she's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, these other firms aren't doing right by me. I wanna go do something different." A trailblazer, like, I think it's a really nice, whether you're male or female, it's a great model for just business owners in general.
Yeah, I think so. And I would say it's also probably a connection with you being a student in everything in life. It sounds like you got creative with your name and you probably wouldn't have known all that information if you weren't a student of the industry.
Well, and I didn't know a ton about her, that's true, either until I was looking for a name for my company, and I really love history of things also, and I wanna pay homage to that history, and especially people who have gone before us in these journeys that we're all on, and so it was a great name for me as a person and said a lot for me, but, yeah, I've learned a lot about Muriel since I named my company after her.
I love that. And I think that transitions us nicely. So she was a trailblazer in a lot of ways. And our goal today is to educate advisors on blazing their own path. And you're obviously an expert in transitions. I think there's a ton of misconceptions, a ton of uncertainty, a ton of just a lack of knowledge out there, especially from the wirehouse world. And
Mhm.
so if we can unsheath it a little bit and help people to blaze their own trail, I think that would be awfully exciting.
It would be, right? Because I think when we're blazing our own trail, we are completely in every way owning our life. And there's nothing sort of more powerful than taking agency over your own life. And that means your career.
Amen. So why don't you kick us off by the very, very first thought that an advisor should have? If they're thinking about making a move, what's the first question that they should ask themselves?
Very first question they should ask themselves is, why am I making this move? And what is my vision for my future practice? We really have to start there because your vision as an advisor might be different than the advisor down the street or your buddy down the street's vision. And so we really want to make sure that we match you up to the right firm that's going to actually enable you to achieve your vision. If your vision, for example, is a fee only practice, and you want to be able to call yourself fee only, well, that puts us in a certain category of firms. If your vision is that you want to be able to acquire additional books of business in the future and you want the highest chances of that, that's going to put us in a different category of firms. And so that vision for what you want to accomplish and what you want to build, that's going to drive all of the rest of the decisions. And there's hundreds or even probably thousands of firms that we could consider for you.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's interesting as you say that. What comes to mind for me is before I really started to learn about what's out there, I thought that if you left a very supportive location, that you were completely on your own and you were truly blazing a trail and you had to be 100% an entrepreneur and ready to handle everything. And what I've learned is that's not necessarily the case. It could be if you want it, but it doesn't have to be.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's like a whole spectrum of offerings in there, right? And we can go all the way from still being a W 2, but owning your practice, owning your book of business, all the way to I'm pushing every single button for my business that there possibly is. And there's every variety in between. And so getting really clear on that vision, what you do want to do, where you want to be spending your time is going to be really important. But this whole idea of independence equaling being alone is definitely kind of a false narrative. It is, it doesn't have to be an either or. It absolutely is an and it's about finding you the right mix in order for you to achieve the practice that you're dreaming of.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a passion of ours for sure at Cedarwood.
Yeah, and I
So,
don't think that people can
right,
build a really great thriving practice completely on their own. They need to have people in their lives that they're looking up to, or maybe people even that they're mentoring themselves. And groups like Cedarwood are really nice for that because you do have a built-in community.
100%. Yeah, I think life for most people is hard when you're completely alone, and it can definitely be lonely. And candidly, it can be lonely even when you're at a firm with other advisors around. And I've experienced that personally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to interview you about that and be like, tell me more.
well, we might have that opportunity sometime, but today I want to make sure that we're getting your values and not mine. So, why don't you tell us what some of the biggest misconceptions are and unsheath some of that the fogginess, the cloudiness around making a change.
Yeah, well, I definitely think the independence one that you just named is a really big one. Another one is that you're thinking all the firms are basically the same. Right? And like once you've seen one firm, they're all the same, or because you know one person at a firm that that's absolutely where you should go because you know somebody there and all the firms are basically the same. When it comes to service, when it comes to compliance, the culture, the technology, even the pricing, there are huge differences between the various firms. And so again, it really is matching the advisor or the practice to the firm structure that's going to be most supportive for them. When I'm working with clients, advisors, I say that we're going to match on three elements. One is the functional fit, one is the financial fit, and the third is what I call personality fit. It's kind of like the culture elements, but I don't really love the word culture. So I call it personality instead. Um, but functional is like all the things that you need to build a thriving practice. It's the advisory platform. Do you want to be able to offer tax or estate planning, right? It's like all the
Mm.
truly functional things that you need in order to deliver a client experience. Financial is going to be like, do you need or want upfront money? How important are the various elements of the pricing? Is a W-2 option where you own your practice still maybe a viable piece for you? How do you feel about private equity ownership? Those are all the things in that kind of financial bucket. And then the personality bucket is really matching you to a place that you can feel like is the right home for you. And that might be a small firm, it might be a really large firm. All kinds of variations in there about what makes somebody feel at home inside of a firm.
Yeah, you covered a whole lot in three simple pieces there, right? And I think one of the biggest challenges for people who don't know much about the industry, and you say often not everything's apples to apples. So, what are some of the things that you see people really thinking, "No, this is so important," and they think they have a grasp on it, but truly they're not looking at apples to apples in that situation?
Oh my goodness. There's really two big ones I can think of immediately. One is going to be financials and the second is going to be the support at the time of transition. And so that let's start with the second one there. The transition support services and what's offered to you can vary dramatically from firm to firm. And when we're talking there about transition, we're thinking about what is the labor that they're going to help you with when it comes time to repaper all of your clients. As an advisor, especially if you're leaving a captive or a wirehouse firm, you're going to be busy calling your clients and asking them for all the various pieces of of the paperwork and just talking to them about your story about why you are making the move. Then there's the actual filling out of the paperwork, getting the DocuSigns over to your clients, et cetera. We want as much of that bucket of work covered by others as we can to free the advisors up to be making those client facing phone calls. So
Right.
that can really vary a lot. The second piece is the financials. All right, this is my biggest pet peeve, if you will,
Love it.
is the
Let's hear it.
financials and thinking that all the financials are like basically the same. There's wildly vast differences in the financials of firms. So when it comes to developing the kind of financial pieces, especially when it comes to ongoing economics, there's three components. Number one is your payout when you're on an independent kind of broker dealer world, right? It's payout, it's admin fees on the advisory and the fixed costs, which are things like the FINRA charges and the E&O insurance and your tech platform fees, et cetera. We have to look at all three of those together, not just payout, in order to really understand what your take home economics are going to be. Some firms have very high advisory fees, but also very high payouts. Well, high advisory fee means you make less money. High payout means you make more money. So they've sort of just equalized it right there, right?
Yeah.
Other firms are more about a medium payout, medium advisory fees. On paper, it could look not great when you just look at those payout percentages, but when you do the math on it, it's actually can turn out better. So just have to be really, really careful about doing the math all the way on those offers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's oftentimes how much are they showing you of what you're paying for, right? Some
Yes.
places it's okay. I'm getting 40%, and that's what I get, and you don't really know all those background expenses, right? They just add it in there. And there's other places where they say, "Here's your payout," and then these other things come out afterwards. And so you really have to think. How many advisors say, I'm at 95 or 90, 99% payout," and you think, well, not really.
Yeah. I roll my eyes at that because it is a definitely not really. There's no one at a truly 95% payout once you take into account the admin fees on the advisory side and the fixed costs. It's just not. It's not realistic. It's not happening.
And candidly, I think as a business person, you should probably ask yourself, how would this company make enough money to pay their employees and keep their lights on if they're only getting 1%?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, it does. It just doesn't make sense. And so then you have to look at all the other factors for that value because they are making money for sure.
Yeah. Well, a beautiful segue. So, outside of payout percentages, what do you see being the biggest long term factors of an advisor's success after they make a change?
Okay, so the factors for long-term kind of success is going to come down to obviously their own kind of work ethic, et cetera, right? You still have to go out and build your business post transition. You might be building the business slightly differently. So definitely thinking through what is your messaging and your client experience going to look like in that future state. But if we're really trying to think about what factors have a big impact on an advisor's business, I'm also probably thinking about the advisor's eventual exit. And
Mm.
so if we look at what factors create a sustainable business and one that has high exit value, you're going to see people moving more of their revenue into recurring revenue. You're going to see people leaning towards the RIA side, the RIA channel of the business. Traditionally, they're going to have higher multiples than a broker dealer business at the time of exit. And we're also going to be looking at things like even just the how the practice is run. So do you have good books and records? Do you have a repeatable marketing process? Do you have a essentially that prospecting engine, and then you have that repeatable process for how you're bringing in those prospects and converting them to clients? That type of year over year success is what will later on determine your exit values.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I've been stunned to learn that most advisors I speak with don't have a succession plan or a continuity plan. And 40% over 40% of advisors think they're going to retire in the next 10 years. So how can those two things correlate?
Absolutely. I see that all the time in stories from other advisors. We see it in the data. You know, Kestra did a really nice study on succession just a few months ago that was fantastic. And it said that, one of the reasons people don't have successors is because they are not convinced that any other advisor can serve their clients as well as they can. Well, I can appreciate that thought, right? But you still need a successor. You still need a continuity plan because that also ensures that your practice will live on, your clients will be served, your family will be served, et cetera. Um, it reminds me, Alex, when I was at Edward Jones, one of the kind of early in my tenure there, I was in client insights, and we would travel the country and talk to clients, investors, advisors about all kinds of different topics. And one of the projects that my team led was one on insurance. So, life insurance specifically. And what we found is there was basically a third of advisors that did not want to talk about insurance at all to their clients. Well, what we also found was that about a third of clients didn't ever want to talk about insurance either. They didn't want to think about death. And
Mm.
basically, it comes down to a third of people just don't want to talk about death. They don't want to think about it. Well, as a financial advisor, like that is super irresponsible of you. One, not to make sure your clients are protected, but also not to protect yourself and your own business and your clients from the inevitable. Because it will all happen. What's the phrase? None of us get out of here alive. So at some point, we all have to handle this and deal with it. And it is time to be brave, but it's shocking how many people don't have a continuity plan. They don't have a succession plan. And part of that is inertia. Part of that is fear of talking about the inevitable. I like to tell people it's time to be brave, but also let's find you a match that is person centered that you can really feel good about leaving your clients with.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're going through this process, I suppose, what percentage of the advisors or firms that you're coming across have something set up for continuity and succession?
Usually when they're talking with me, we're talking about that as part of their move or their build of an RIA, et cetera. I would say
Right.
most of the ones that I talk with probably do have something set up, but I'm talking primarily with advisors that are being a bit more proactive about their business.
Okay.
Some of them, though, are going independent for the first time. So it's something we're coaching on too and saying, hey, you need to have this in place shortly after you make your jump so that people are cared for afterwards, right? You're going from a captive environment like a wirehouse where they can just absorb your practice into the rest of the firm. When you're an independent advisor, there's not necessarily someone that will automatically absorb your clients and take care of them in the way that you want them to be cared for.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it's such an intimate relationship. And if you ask most advisors, how do you feel about your clients? Most of them will use the word that love, right? They love their clients. And I just can't
Yeah.
imagine loving my
Yeah.
clients and then having no plan if I got hit by a bus tomorrow that they'd be taken care of.
Yes, yes, I agree. I don't it doesn't ever sit well with me when that's the case. Candidly, the other one I see a lot that is also hard for me to accept is I have the client who one of the members of their team is 81. And I was hearing just earlier today on another call about a member of a team being 88 and still working. One, I don't want to work when I'm 88. I don't. But two, I think that means that we haven't figured out what the other elements of our life that can be fulfilling for us could be. And we haven't figured out how to trust people and build a team around us, which I see as sort of a falter in the leadership skills of some of those advisors. So I really want to see good succession, continuity plan, and then reasonably timed exits. Just because you can work until you're 80 doesn't mean that you should. Like go and have your life too.
Yeah. There's so much wisdom in that. And I do think it's interesting. You look at advisors overall and put a general feeling on them. They're mostly type A. A lot of them are sales, right? They're not necessarily leaders who know how to build out and trust. You know, they're almost the inventor, not the guy who turns into Bill Gates because he can let go.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're
Yeah.
battling a lot of that throughout your conversations and trying to bring that to light a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And trying to be really specific with them on, hey, here's some of the buttons you're going to need to push in your future business. Let's make sure you're ready to do that and you've got the right systems in place for it. But I think you're right. I do think there's a lot of type A's, et cetera. But even with that, I just am kind of befuddled at the not wanting to move on and move out and sort of celebrate this business that you have built to such a wonderful place. Celebrate that as you exit and keep those friendships. Go golfing with everybody every week. Because at that point, those clients have become your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'd be curious from your perspective, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see as people make transitions?
Yeah. So first mistake is not fighting hard enough for your practice. Now I'm not an attorney. I don't have to like put that legal hat on. Obviously, we have to follow all the rules. But if you're leaving a captive environment, you should expect them to fight back and to probably play a little bit dirty. And you should be prepared for that. And it doesn't mean they're bad people and you're not a good person if you fight back, right? It just means this is the business side of the world coming out. And it almost always, without fail, will happen. I was working with an advisor in South Dakota last year, and the initial days after his move were pretty positive. You know, the teams weren't calling his clients really. It wasn't too bad, right? He thought, "Oh, okay, they're not going to be really nasty. It's going to be okay." Well, week 2 came along and it really did change a lot, right? And so what happens then is they start to call, they start to leave messages for your clients and say things like, "So and so has left the firm, but don't worry, your money is safe with us."
Huh.
It's not an outright lie or terrible statement, but it's an innuendo that can create and lessen confidence in you as the advisor that the client really does want to follow. So you just have to be prepared and ready for that. And you've got to come out with some excitement. You got to come out with a really great story about why you're making this move and how it's in the best interest of your clients. And so we really work a lot. I work a lot with my clients on what is that story going to look like and how are we going to approach it in the marketplace, because we need to come out with a sort of like we ride at dawn kind of an attitude, and that can be a little scary for people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting when you consider a lot of advisors out there, I don't think they understand that they have a business. It,
Yeah.
it's kind of thrown out there. This is your business, run it how you want. But I don't, I think it took me years to realize, I found these people who then trusted me with their life savings. And I didn't understand that this is mine. Like these are my people. This is money that's coming in because of the work that I'm putting in. So very interesting.
Yeah, that's an important thing, right? Like you mentally had to shift from I am an employee, I am working for whichever firm, to this is my business and I fully own it, et cetera. Like that is a shift in in the mental load of how you serve those clients, maybe how you feel inside about serving those clients, and the level of confidence that you probably bring up too.
Yeah, definitely. So I think for me, what I would love to hear from you is people are thinking about transitioning. And whether it's top of mind or whether it's something that they think, someday I probably will, because I feel like that's in my best interest. What's the single most important question to you that advisor needs to answer before committing to transition?
That is a super great question. There are a lot of questions that are going to go through that advisor's head. I think the single most important one is going to be, why not now? And I think you should have a good answer for it. You need to have an answer for why now, because that's going to be your client facing story, right? And then a why not now, because that why not now is that inertia that brings so many advisors down. And
Mm.
that inertia, it's never going to be easier in the future than it is today. You're going to continue to build your book of business. It's going to continue to be a harder thing in the future to move your practice. So once you're over 50 or 100 million in particular, you've got enough assets that you've got a business that is sizable and it has some sustainability to it. That's the sizing where above that you can start to look for making a move. Prior to that, you need to just keep your head down and build your business, right? Build your client base, et cetera. Once you've reached it to a sustainable place, then you can say, okay, now how am I serving in the future? What does this look like? And there are a lot of folks who get really they have that strong inertia. There are multi-generational practices out there that are like, I can't leave XYZ firm because my parent was here, my cousin was here, my whomever was here, right? And that multi-generational aspect can hold them back from making a move too. It's never going to get easier, and you owe it to yourself and to your clients to be having a bit of a fiduciary duty and taking a look around. You can say you're a fiduciary, but also part, I think, of being a fiduciary for your clients is looking at, am I on the right platform for my clients that gives them the best opportunity to have the product line, the services, the planning that they deserve?
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's sometimes you choose to be blind so you don't be stretched with those questions and the stress of, am I doing what's in my client's best interest? Well, if I don't know, then I don't have to worry about that question. But if you don't know, then you're probably not looking out for them as much as you think, right? And that's not
Yeah.
a comment on anyone. Just sometimes it's very comfortable to stay where you're at.
It is. Inertia is a really powerful force for every human being. So, we talked at the very beginning of this around taking agency over your career in life, and inertia is status quo. That's not living an agency focused sort of life. That is a I like my life as is now. It's doing the comfortable thing, the easy thing, etc. But that doesn't mean that it's always in the best interest of yourself, your family, or your clients.
Very true. So, Shelby, somebody says, I am ready to take control. I'm ready to make a change or at least consider it. I want to take the very first step. What's your guidance on where to start?
Yeah, guidance on where to start, and obviously I'm a little bit biased here, but guidance on where to start is to call an independent recruiter similar to myself, or, there's a whole bunch of them in the marketplace, but call somebody who is not associated with one of the firms. Because what we can do is help you see all of the various choices. Almost everybody is going to have heard of a Raymond James or an LPL, but there's a whole bunch of other choices, even to be able to match them to people like you guys at Cedarwood. They may not know about Cedarwood yet, but we do. And so we can really do a better job of sort of shortcutting the research down and matching you more effectively to a team and a group or a firm that is going to be the actual right fit for you. It's going to have the right personality fit, it's going to give you the right financials, and they're actually going to make, and we know for certain that they're going to meet your functional needs. Um, that's, I think, number one. Number two is start listening to podcasts like this one. There's a whole handful of them out there. I have one. There's the Broken Dealer is another one. The Mindy Diamond podcast. Start binging on those podcasts and start to get acquainted with what is out there in the industry. Because when you've been inside of a captive organization in particular, and even a captive BD, you've had sort of blinders on. You haven't seen the RIA side of the world. You haven't seen the independent broker dealer side of the world. And when you start looking, there's going to be a lot of education that you're going to gain. So definitely start binging on those types of things. And then I'll be selfish and say I've got two tools on my website. One is something called the Fit Test, and you can enter your email and download it. It just takes you through 10 self assessment questions to say, is making a move a reasonable thing for me? Should I be thinking about making a move based on my satisfaction level, essentially, my answers to these 10 questions? And then the second thing that I am launching right now is a 2-minute RIA assessment because we have a lot of folks who are interested in potentially going to the RIA side of the world, that channel. And so this kind of does a quick 2-minute assessment on if you're ready for that or not.
Awesome. Well, and I'll echo that. So I'll just say podcasts for me, first of all, they're confidential because you're listening to them in your car by yourself. They taught
Yes.
me a lot. And then people like you, I mean, as I read through your bio, just for anyone listening, they know that you're probably smarter than they are and you're diving into this world. You're not just some salesperson who's going to try and link them with the best paying opportunity. It's going to be the right fit. And you truly are a student of the game and you understand what's going on way better than they will. So I think that's a great place to start personally as well. And then I do have one last question because this is a recent thing that happened. So we saw that change that the team made from Merrill Lynch. I believe it was $129 billion in assets.
Billion. Yeah. Woo.
Unbelievable. How do you think that's going to change the industry?
Oh, man. I mean, that is the talk of the town, number one, right? Like what that team did is absolutely incredible. I mean, you guys were a big lift out of Edward Jones. No, nowhere even near, honestly, on the scale of this one from Merrill's. Super fascinating move. And what they did is they went all the way to the RIA channel directly instead of taking, often there's a pit stop in the independent broker dealer space first. And so they went all the way to RIA only. I do think it's a sea change for the RIA world. Like they have become one of the largest RIAs in the country overnight. So absolutely incredible move. I think it'll put a lot of interest into the RIA side of the world. But no matter what it says, doesn't matter how long you've been at a firm, it doesn't matter that you've only been at one firm, doesn't matter how big you are, making a move to independence, whether that's an RIA or it's an independent broker dealer model, is now possible, right? There's no excuses, no matter if you've been there forever or super large.
Yeah, they weren't going to quietly make a change, were they?
There was no quiet. There was no way to get that one slipped under the rug.
No. No, they had a
Not
bullseye
at
on their
that
back, I'm
size.
sure. Hour one. Well, fantastic. Shelby, I've gotten so much value out of this and just appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. Any parting words on your part?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate you including me. It's great to be here. I love talking with other Edward Jones folks who have come out and created these businesses that they're just super proud of. So, really excited to have you guys on my podcast too coming up.
Absolutely. We're excited. Well, thank you. And thank you for everyone listening and visiting for another episode of Beyond the Trees.